Hello, this is Digital Accessibility, the people behind the progress. I'm Joe Walensky, the creator and host of this series. And as an accessibility professional myself, I find it very interesting as to how others have found their way into this profession. So let's meet one of those people right now and hear about their journey. All right, well, welcome. Today I have the pleasure of speaking with Ashley Firth. Hi, Ashley. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I am in my home office at Vashon Island near Seattle, which is where Blink's headquarters are, and we're just starting to get back into doing uh, some office visits, but still working from home mostly. Where are you talking to me from?
I'm talking to you from London, in the United Kingdom. We are still doing a bit of a mixture of office visits. A lot of people still working from home, very much a personal preference at the moment. We are edging towards various freedoms. Somewhere near mid-July, we're supposed to be a little bit more free, but being safe up until that point.
Being safe and healthy is very important. So, well, there are a number of things that I thought we could talk about, but maybe a good place to start would be if you could give a brief description of what you're doing today.
Sure thing. Yeah. So right now, as of today, my job title is head of interfaces, which is a broad and weird job title to describe the idea that I bring front end developers, back end developers, mobile developers, and designers together to solve problems effectively. And the problems we're solving are in the energy industry. So I work for Octopus Energy, who are an energy supplier in the UK. We did recently open up in the US, over in Texas, and a few other places across the world. So my job is to try and make all of those experiences feel consistent, feel great, feel seamless, and feel inclusive, importantly, as well, to make sure that everyone can kind of engage with the content and make sure everybody that works for us is aware of just how important that is.
And the thing that ended up connecting me with you was your book, Practical Web Inclusion and Accessibility, and that's something that we can talk about a little bit more later. But that's probably related to the work that you're doing there as well, right?
Oh, no doubt. Yes, no doubt. It's the result of a lot of work that has gone in a lot of places that perhaps didn't care about it as much as they should, and then helping to build a place that truly did. So yeah, that was the culmination of all of that, I think.
Well, one of the things that I'm interested in these interviews that I'm doing here is just finding out how people found their way to the accessibility work that they're doing today. For many of us, it's not a straight path or one that we even knew we were on when we started it. But why don't you talk a little bit, kind of pick a starting point for your career, some of the highlights, of kind of where you started and what the progression was that got you to where you are today.
Sure, yeah, no problem, no problem. I think probably one of the most important starting points is when I didn't know about accessibility. To be honest with you, I studied in a place called Bournemouth in the south of England. Nothing about my degree taught me about accessibility, unfortunately. We got the opportunity to learn a little bit about web design and development, game design and development, all of that great stuff, but there wasn't really anything that placed an emphasis on that, which looking back now is a real shame. And I know that there is work going in to try and make that better. But I came out into the industry, me and a lot of colleagues, unaware of that as a general area, and started working in an agency in central London, which had some great clients, a lot of nice names, a lot of names that I knew and that I was excited to work on for various different projects in various different timeframes. But one thing that seemed quite consistent to me was the pace at which everything was being built and the priorities those people had when they were building them. So we would build a website for a well-known client, and it had to be done in X amount of months. And when that happens, you can only throw so many people at it, and decisions start being made about where that effort should be posted. Should it be, to try and get an extra feature put in there? Is it to make it work for a certain number of older browsers or anything like that? And one thing that didn't really factor into that conversation is, okay, but what if somebody doesn't see the site? What if they don't see the various colors of that site? What if they don't navigate it with a mouse? Is it still possible? Is there anything that allows them to think about like that? And I had started having a little bit of a look at that general area purely out of curiosity, to be honest, to kind of understand why there wasn't a conversation going on about these things. Because I mean, you will know, it's one of those threads you pull and it just keeps going and it keeps going. And there's a whole rabbit hole to explore. And it confused me a lot why that wasn't at the forefront of the conversations that were being had. I was spending time making a website work for a browser that very few people still used. It was usually the client themselves that had outdated computers, your old IE8s and 9s, that needed to make sure that this website worked in a decent way and worked for them, but didn't give any emphasis to accessibility at all. And so it was that, amongst a few other things, that got me thinking that maybe my efforts were being put in the wrong place, to be honest with you. It sounded good to have these names working on your CV, but I didn't feel like I was building something I could be proud of. And, there was no good answer when somebody would say, well, why doesn't it work in this way? Why couldn't it work in this way? Which was the start of a real frustration to me.
Well, yeah, let's just kind of stop there for a second, because you mentioned, pulling the thread and the rabbit hole. And certainly I think most of us that start to explore accessibility for the first time realize there's a lot that's already been discussed out there. But what exactly was it that you identify? Like, what were some of the resources that you identified at the time, and kind of what was your feeling as you started to find your way down that rabbit hole?
Yeah, good question. I remember the first tool that I properly had a look at was a series of do and don't posters that were made by the UK government. So we have something called the GDS, so the Government Digital Service, that by law are required to be accessible to a certain level, which is WCAG 2.1 at AA level. They have to ensure that all their journeys are kind of that level. And after the Equality Act, a lot of effort went in there to ensure that they were getting to that point. And as part of that, they were sharing some of the experiences that they had as they were going through these journeys. And they had created these series of posters, and they were just really top level things. As you said, kind of each one of them, its own kind of cluster of things that you can then go and ask 1,000 questions about. But it was the very first thing. You could kind of pop them up on the walls and they would be there constantly. You would be working and it would tweak in your brain and you would go, okay, yeah, cool, I need to think about that. And like almost prompts that exist everywhere. And so from each one of those, it created an area, like a topic that I was like, okay, you know what, this week I'm going to go and find out everything I can about screen readers. Let me try JAWS for a bit, and let me try what VoiceOver is and what's the difference between them. Let me try doing my job for a week just with a screen reader. Can I get by? Can I learn what the deal is with that? And other great things that they have from like going down that GDS kind of avenue was they have empathy labs in the UK as well, which allow you to kind of go and, to the best of their ability, try and simulate some of these access needs, right? You can understand what it would be like to have a sensory deprivation or, a visual impairment or something like that. No absolute copy for the real thing, of course, but it's a starter. It's something that allows you to start going, oh, okay, yeah, I'm starting to really understand beyond like a persona profile, where you try a hypothetical test and say, okay, Jane is 25 and she has a visual impairment. Can I get through this journey? You start to go, okay, well, can I do that myself? Is that something that's at all possible? So I think those were the main things initially that had me going, okay, I need to understand this is what one company is doing in one area because they have to. Let me understand a little bit more the people that are kind of going at this when they don't have to, and the conversations that exist there. And that led me to various meetups. They hosted a lot of those. So again, it's a bit like the topics themselves. You start with one area, they are doing some other things, they are doing things in another avenue. You start to meet like-minded people, you start to find other resources, and it just kind of kept going from one to the other. I would just hop around all of these various different areas and understand as much as I could and meet people with those access needs to truly understand what it was that was causing those barriers between the content that should be so easy for them to kind of access online, given the platform that it's on, but has reached a situation where they're being failed by the people that are building these things, unfortunately, sometimes without them even knowing.
And did you have support from your organization that you were working on at the time? I know that's an issue for people. I mean, a lot of us kind of get in just doing it because we want to learn ourselves, but it's always helpful if we get support in the daily work that we do. How did it shake out for you?
The the place I was at when I first started researching, I did not have buy-in for sure. I was doing this on my own time. I was kind of understanding this as much as I could in and around. I of course would have conversations with people, on client work, if that was product or project managers, if it was stakeholders, etc., to kind of say we should probably have a look at in this. But it wasn't until I joined the company that I'm at now, where we were starting from the ground up. I was one of the first people in to try and set values that would stay with us through the whole time, right? And so, really early on in that journey, I spoke to our CEO, Greg, and said, "Hey, I need to truly understand what this is. We wanted to be a tech-first company. We wanted to provide solutions that were truly inclusive, and I didn't feel like, even after doing the reading that I had done, I didn't feel equipped enough to kind of start building something without truly understanding the different avenues that people might engage with it." So I said to him, I need a bit of time. Everything that a CEO doesn't want to hear, when we don't have a quote journey and we don't have any customers and we haven't signed anybody up. I said, I need about 3 weeks. I need to go away. I need to have a look at everything. There was no way I was going to get all of the knowledge in 3 months, but 3 weeks, but I could understand enough of it initially to build something that I wouldn't look back on and regret. And to his credit, he was like, yeah, okay, we need to do it right. Let's see if we can build this into everything that we're doing so that we don't try and bolt it on or find a halfway solution with a third party down the line. Let's see if we can build something that's actually inclusive. And so I'm very thankful to that. It's amongst many of the other reasons why I'm still here, why I'm still trying to kind of push that along, and why other people have joined in many instances, us as a supplier or us as a employer, because these are the things that matter to us and we actually put the time in. And it's the first time I've experienced that, and I'm very, very thankful that he was so understanding at that time, because it's allowed it to kind of to grow and be really one of the pillars of what we think is important, right? They're customers and they want to engage with us, and they have the right to do that in the way that they want to.
And so then, as you've moved forward, working on different projects over time, different organizations, have have you kind of come at it as like the one person in your organization working on it, like from a developer's perspective, or have you had designers, researchers also kind of part of a team? It's different, for different people, but sometimes developers end up just having to do it at the end of the project because nothing else has happened before that, and that's always an unfortunate situation. But kind of, what were your experiences in that area?
Yeah, it's an entirely fair point. I think one of the first things that has always struck me going through this over the past few years is I've never met a developer that hasn't wanted to make their sites accessible, right? Not one, to be honest with you, that has gone, no, I've got no interest in it. People are completely willing to do it, and they want to, because developers are curious. They want to kind of understand the various ways that people can connect with it. The problem that we had was that, certainly when I was looking before I kind of started writing the book, was that they were very technical guides and very long and lengthy guides to how to make things accessible. We of course have a framework, which is great to have. It's nice to have success criteria. It's nice to be able to measure it against something, but let's not get it twisted. It's a very intense thing to try and engage with to begin with. I know if I hadn't found certain resources, I would have found it a lot harder to do that. And so having conversations with developers was a lot easier than having it with product managers or designers who, much like us, hadn't really had anything in their kind of teaching or their learning previous for it, but also didn't really have a resource like WCAG and things like that to do something about it. And so this is what started formulating the idea in my mind, is that I wanted to be that kind of initial accessibility champion, and to be like the person that's willing to have those conversations and be someone you can go to, but ultimately that the company wouldn't need one because everybody would be one, right? That's the goal eventually, rather than having someone drive forward an issue, that everybody would have bought into that issue, and that everyone would be thinking about it when they do their work, because then it needs very little governing or kind of monitoring or auditing. Everyone is just involved. And so I wanted to create a conversation that we could have that didn't feel difficult for different disciplines to engage with, that you didn't need to understand coding to get why it was important, to to do the things that we were trying to do, to understand at least at a basic level the barriers that people were coming across when they were engaging with content that we would look at proudly and say, oh, well, this is a lovely website, it's a really nice web page, without thinking about this other almost forgotten area of the audience, that we're just not getting an experience anywhere like something we thought we had built proudly for everybody else. It was not inclusive. So that was probably my initial experience, is one of enthusiasm from all of the developers and one of curiosity from all of the other parts of the business, because they were hearing it for the first time. Truly, it was the first time they'd heard about it.
You mentioned the government regulations around accessibility in the United States. We have a legal framework around that as well, most of which is related to selling digital products and services into the government, and then that can start at the federal level but carry down state, municipal level. But at least in the United States, outside of that, it ends up that it's up to individual organizations to decide, how they want to approach that. In some situations, organizations want to make sure that they don't get into lawsuits related to accessibility, but there are also a lot of organizations that understand the ROI of it, and also understand that it just kind of fits the company and product culture that they want to have. How does it kind of sort out with the projects that you've worked on? Has it been more the stick versus the carrot, or kind of what's been the balance in your experience?
It's a good question. I mean, I'm biased, of course, to begin with, so I'll always say that it's the stick side of things, is that we didn't want to make something that wasn't going to be for everybody, right? And we get a lot of messages, and they're supposed to be nice messages, and there is an aspect of them that is hugely nice to hear. We receive messages from customers that say, I haven't been able to manage my energy before now. I've had a friend or a loved one do it because it's been terribly inaccessible. I now feel like I can have control over this, and I'm very proud. I feel immensely proud to receive messages like that. And then I think to myself, should someone have to choose us for that reason, right? Like, there are so many reasons that you might buy a product, so many reasons that you might prefer one to the other. But what we're talking about is like the basic ability to manage something that is essential on a day-to-day, right? To kind of keep your energy bills in check, and to make sure that you're able to submit readings and all of that stuff. Like, I would want to see an industry where everybody has to adhere to that standard, and then you choose a product based on the values that match yours, i.e., is it renewable? Is it the cheapest that it could be? Do they have great customer service? These are all things that, make a business. And I can completely understand that each one has are better or worse at some of those things. Accessibility, despite you said the kind of the ROI thing, that is a very real thing. It's a lot that can be contributed financially, but I hate the idea that it's something that you have to sell into people, right? That you have to say, hey, look at what this can kind of benefit from your business. I understand there is a semblance of reality to that, but in my head, everyone should be at a basic level where people are able to engage with your product, and then they choose whether their product is for you. The accessibility is not part of the product. It shouldn't be. It should just be there. And although we've been developing it for a while, we've been trying to talk to our competitors effectively in the market, the people around us, to kind of share resources and share the book and kind of say, how's about you have a look at this as well, and everybody will get an opportunity to choose between a range of products based on what they like about your product and not whether they can actually get to your product. That for me is a real, it feels like a very double-edged sword. I love what we're doing, but there's always a drive to do, or to kind of get other people to do that as well, so that we are talking about a real level playing field, because I think that's what the internet can provide, is a place where people can actually engage in a number of different ways to get to the same content and get an enjoyable experience online, and then choose what they want. That's the goal for me. So yeah.
And so in the work that you're doing now, kind of what's a day in the life or the week in the life related to accessibility? What are some of the topics or tasks that come up that you get involved with?
It's a good question. Well, I mean, so a big one is always still education, right? We're always growing as a company, and unfortunately, in the same way that I didn't kind of come here packaged with a lot of accessibility knowledge, we get a lot of people that still don't, and so there's always a worry of kind of creating an accessible website, leaving it to other developers, and it accidentally, slowly but surely, becoming inaccessible if you're not checking it in the same way and making sure that it's upholding the same standards that you set initially. So sharing that information with as many people as I can across the business, helping people understand that, making testing not just kind of functional or kind of coding end-to-end testing be a thing, but actual accessibility testing. There are some fantastic tools that exist now for devs and non-devs. You can do it from a Chrome browser, basic things like the wave checking and lighthouse checking, which is great and a lovely thing for a designer to check their color contrast themselves, or a product manager to check, what something sounds like on a screen reader. That is lovely to see. And then some kind of continuous deployment checks so that they run on new pieces of code and make sure you haven't introduced anything that's inaccessible. That's a big thing for me, is kind of making sure as my team grows that they all share that passion and have that knowledge, so that they're not even inadvertently making the site less accessible than it was. So I think teaching is a big part of that. Talking to other parts of the business. So we have more and more clients working with us based on the things that we have done, the products we've built, and us extending to different parts of the world, which is great, but offers another kind of opportunity to chat to people initially, that having the chance to work with Octopus Energy involves accessibility right from the start. So when people come to visit us, we talk about the benefits of the system and the operating model and the technology, and that's great. But also these things are accessible. You can make sure, we don't know about the current tools that you're using, but respectfully, there's a good chance they might not be accessible. You're dealing with something right out of the box where not only can your customers engage with it if they have access needs or disabilities, but the people that work for you, if they have access needs or disabilities, can work with this system, can do something like that. So we're as focused on making sure that they can work with us as a company and do work from there, to be a true equal opportunity employer, to actually allow people to use our systems, not just make the content that we're putting online accessible, right? So I think it's a mixture of advocacy, a mixture of teaching, a mixture of kind of forever learning as well. We've got this new kind of third version of WCAG that's coming out, and understanding what that looks like. I really like that there is a whole different aspect of that focuses entirely on proper user testing, because of course, these automated testers can get us to a certain point, but actually engaging with people and having them test your products, there's no substitute for it, as you well know anyway. So I love that there is something in there where you can't just run a test and the test says you're accessible and therefore you're accessible, and that's great. You get a big tick there, everything's great. You sit down with someone and say, hey, that might seem like it's totally accessible, but if you listen to this, or if you actually go through in this way, there are some fundamental flaws with it. So I'm a big fan of that. So keeping an eye on what's moving forward, but teaching everybody what they might not know when they first join or when they first start to work with us. I'd say that is probably not a week. That's a multi-month job anyway, like an ongoing job that probably never ends. But that's where my huge focus is at the moment with accessibility.
I mentioned your book at the start of our conversation, Practical Web Inclusion and Accessibility. I've written a few books. I know that it's a large commitment to decide to get into something like that. But what was it for you? How did you decide you were going to sit down and put in the time to work through something like that?
Well, I mean, first of all, if you've done a number of books, you are a far braver man than I am. One is was quite the task, so doing multiple is incredibly impressive. I think it naturally evolved for me. I started writing for a couple of magazines just to kind of get some tutorials out there and say, hey, maybe you could check out this. You know, there's this technology that's come about. You should probably have a look to see whether your sites are inclusive. And that grew to features where I was kind of writing more about an opinion on the state of it at the time and how there perhaps isn't as much emphasis as there should be. And then, as we kind of mentioned a little bit before, starting to talk to people with different disciplines that maybe weren't into web development but didn't really know about accessibility. And I gave a talk at a conference in the UK called the Festival of Marketing, which is notoriously not a dev conference, right? It's filled with product and project managers and various designers and things like that. And I got up and spoke for an hour about the fundamentals of accessibility, but had to do so in a way for a totally different audience, an audience I'd never spoken to before. It made me question how to approach this whole topic, but to do it in a way that was engaging. And so people would come afterwards and ask questions and be like, okay, I kind of know where I can get into. And this is actually really fascinating. You know, this is an excellent challenge, because it's a fascinating topic. There is so much to get into and so much to learn by kind of getting involved with accessibility. And so after doing that talk, I ended up speaking to a publisher, and they said there isn't a book out here that's doing that at the moment. It ended up being twice as big as I'd hoped it would be, because much like the topic, it just kind of kept going and kept going, but they were totally okay with that. And so I did that around my job. It took about 10, 11 months to do. It was an incredibly grueling affair, to be honest with you, like to kind of put all that together. And I'm very thankful to Octopus, where I work, for supporting that, really, in the essence of like understanding that my brain would be in two places for a little bit of time. And I'm incredibly proud that it exists. The title is a bit of a mouthful, but I understand why the publisher would want it to be a bit of a mouthful, because there is a lot about inclusivity and accessibility in there, but it now acts as this kind of conversation topic. As we kind of mentioned with all of the different companies, it is now something that a CEO of another company can pick up and start to read, to understand the concept. A designer that comes to visit, a person that comes to interview Greg will end up talking about accessibility, conversations that just wouldn't happen before, just no one would get onto that topic, perhaps initially or organically, but it's there. And it starts to bring it into the fold every time. And so every time someone visits, they join, and I'll happily talk about it for hours and hours. So that's no problem at all. So that is how it came about. That is why it exists now, and the response to it has been lovely. It's really nice to see people get into the topic for the first time through what you've written down. It is by no means a finished article, because it's always a constant thing, right? It's always evolving. But from that point in time, giving someone a starter and a basis, I'm very proud of it. I'm glad that it exists.
Yeah, well, congratulations on doing that and contributing to the knowledge share in this area. And yeah, I think about accessibility as an iterative activity myself. There's just so much out there, but if you get frozen, it's better to just pick some place to start.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Everything we do is an improvement for somebody, which is one of the kind of enjoyable parts of this activity, I think.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for taking this time to chat with me for this, and I'm sure everybody listening and watching this will appreciate it as well. And good luck in all of the rest of your accessibility efforts.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you for taking the time.